All right, well, let's go back to Nasrec now and cross to SABC News international editor Sophie Mokoena, who is about to give us the latest from there. Sophie, a very good afternoon to you. So a sea of red as the EFF gathers to take stock of how far they've come and also to map the way forward. The CIC, they're tabling a very long and detailed political report. What were some of your biggest highlights from that speech?
We are coming live here from Nasrec, where the economic freedom fighters are having their Congress, where they will be electing new leadership. The economic freedom fighters, when they launched their organization, they did model it around a Pan-Africanist movement. We saw how they were able to have similar sister organizations on the continent. You look at Namibia. The EFF in Namibia got one seat recently during elections. You have the EFF in Ghana, you have the EFF in Liberia, in Zimbabwe, and there's a delegation from Zimbabwe here. They also have friends in other countries, even though they are not EFF. For example, some opposition parties that they share common vision in terms of the unity of the continent. That is why today we saw a guest from Botswana. You would recall that the EFF leader did attend the inauguration of the president of Botswana, Duma Boko. And also, you know that at some point in time, Malema visited Ghana, where he met the current president-elect Mahama at that time because of the EFF in that country. And he was traveling from Liberia after attending the inauguration of the president of Liberia. But with me here I have Professor Lisibatefu, who's going to speak to us about the EFF international outlook and the policies. But earlier on, I just want to recap there, we saw a very, very emotional Julius Malema. We've covered Julius Malema many times. I've never seen Malema sharing a tear. Even when they were expelled immediately after that pronouncement by the ANC that the DC, the appeal, has taken a decision not even to suspend them or him, but rather to expel him. When they went to Mama Winnie's house, Winnie Madikizela Mandela, the ANC stalwart in Orlando, when they were going to communicate to her the outcome of the ANC appeals committee, they didn't cry. This is the first time I see Malema crying. Prof, let's start off with Malema crying. What did you read? It looks like, judging from the electoral performance, what happened to Floyd Shivambu, his relationship with Ndlozi, what do you think those factors at that moment, he was reflecting on these challenging moments for him personally?
It could be, or maybe it's one of those. But the primary one that touched me most, those who know him from the village, Masakaneng and so on, Kingwana wa Koko is a child of the grandmother. The only parent he knows is his grandmother. And that touched me most because I have a sense of the upbringing he had and the relationship he had, and that could have brought in at least some heavy emotions. But coupled with the existential experience and challenges he's going through right now, that could have compounded the problem. But I think I would rather locate it within the family, because even the challenges he experiences, right, they do have a bearing on the extended family. At the same time, you know, when you go home, you can feel the people's pain on your behalf. And it obviously, as a human being, it would happen. Because he says, I know what my family, my extended family, go through.
Yes, I remember when he had those challenges, the youth league in the province going to his home, outside his home. I was with Mahlatsi Gallants at that time. The youth league carrying that coffin, saying that we've buried you.
Mama Bolo. And them, if I may, perhaps under correction, but I think I'm right. But that was then. But he was still very strong. And Ukoko was by his side. If you remember, all the the major activities for the ANC and even for his party, Koko was always by his side. And I think it could, even to me, bring heavy memories, not only, especially because she's not there and I'm going through this, and if she was still alive, I would just get to the car, go back home, sit by his side, and then that would be, solace would be derived from the company of Koko.
Let's talk about the EFF, the international document of the EFF. It looks like they are not in terms of the unity of the continent, and him even saying, even if that can lead to us losing some votes, a principle is a principle. How should the EFF handle this stance on African migration, much as they believe in Africa, but how do you take South Africans on board? Because the reality is South Africans are squeezed, and therefore they will see this immigration and migration being a factor in terms of them achieving whatever was promised in relation to freedom.
I think he was more circumspect and reticent today than he was yesterday on the question of migration. Remember, he could be bold enough, if needs be. I would rather not be the president of this country. But in the past 2-3 months, there is less of that. And today, I almost missed that bit, right? Because I did look forward to it. So either there is a bit of maturity or responsiveness to the cries, the wailing of the people on the ground. I think nobody says people shouldn't come here. But the how part of putting it, and even going as far as saying, find creative ways to break the laws of the country, the price to pay was heavy for them. And then I think lessons have been learned. He was a bit nuanced. I almost missed it. But Pan-Africanism, who as a native would not be in favor of that? Pulling resources together, intellectual or material, for the advancement of the continent. Almost every reasonable person would go that route. But even going beyond, so with sister organizations that went through what we went through, who supported us, and they need our support. I think I support the EFF for that. And another credit that I give the EFF is that they formed something called the EFF. And it could replicate itself in many countries. And to some extent, Boko in Botswana is an ENF product. They were buddies, they talked this language together. There he is, he's a president of the country. And Malema was feted like a head of state when he went there for the inauguration. How many countries today have EFF parties, and some of them are in parliament already? To that extent, credit to them, kudos to them.
Finally, let's look at the global issues. Very firm again on Palestine, even emphasizing the fact that that embassy, the Israel embassy question, must be resolved as they have decided in parliament, and the head of state must take a decision as a custodian of the foreign policy in the country. At a critical time when there's also a major challenge in Syria.
It does not matter what. Every native in South Africa who understands the role that others played, those who don't know Yasser Arafat, right? Go and read about him, especially those who pretend to be politicians, aspirant politicians, right? Look at the solidarity, the support we had. Now at this hour, we must shun them when they need our support. I remember somebody by the name of Nelson Mandela, maybe you know him, who once said, "Your enemies are not my enemies, and prescribe not for me who should I associate with." Never mind your military might or economic resources. The bottom line is, allow us our sovereignty to determine our destiny and to determine who our friends should be.
Thank you so much. We are continuing with our discussion in terms of getting international guests. We are going to speak to a guest from the continent. As I pointed out, there were many people from the African continent. Good afternoon.
Afternoon, ma'am.
Why was it so important to travel all the way to come and join the EFF?
We had received an invitation from the ruling party in Botswana, the newly elected ruling party in Botswana, We are friends to the EFF, we are friends to CIC Julius Malema.
The issue of how you balance being in government and the relationship with opposition parties, because of course you come from the opposition benches and you've been supporting each other. How are you going to navigate this? I remember speaking to the ANC saying, actually we journalists are getting it wrong because during exile years, it is not BDP that actually was there. BDP gave refuge and support, and they continued when BDP became a government with different leaders. But BNF is the one that supported the ANC during struggle years.
Yes, it's true that BNF supported ANC a lot during the liberation struggle. But even as we just got into power, we are in a position that we cannot forget our allies. Even those in opposition, we should not forget them. Even though we are ruling, we'll have a government relationship with the ruling parties, but we are doing things differently. Those opposing parties that stood with us, we'll never forget them. I'm a member of parliament from the ruling party, having mandated to come here to represent them in a congress of an opposition party.
What was your message to the EFF, carrying the message from your coalition?
Was just to keep them moving. They must stay focused. Opposition parties get issues and internal strifes. We have passed through that in Botswana. The BNF has had 2 splits or 3 splits in history. But look at where we are now. We are the ruling party. We hope the EFF will take over in 2029.
Thank you for your time. Let's continue our last guest. The EFF from Zimbabwe, quite a very difficult terrain. You are here. How important it was for EFF Zimbabwe to be here?
As you know, the EFF is not an African issue. It's a continental issue. We've been here. First, NPA, second NPA, we are here now, third NPA. So going across the continent. We've got EFF Zimbabwe, EFF Namibia, EFF Malawi, EFF Ghana, Liberia. All over we've got over 19 EFF across Africa. Solid political parties in their own right participating. We are participating in Zimbabwe. We are growing structures across Zimbabwe. So it was very important because this is a historic NPA which will usher in the new leadership that will then come with the new mandate for the next 5 years. So the EFF in Zimbabwe and the EFF anywhere in Africa is glued, even if those who are not here. For example, EFF Namibia is not here because they are attending a SADC engagement in Livingstone. So they've sent a message of support to say that they are with EFF, they are solid behind the leadership of the Commander-in-Chief, Comrade Julius Malema.
Much for your time. As you can see, you have sister parties on the continent. It is no surprise. Malema is the product of the African National Congress, the oldest liberation organization on the continent. We know that many countries on the continent, when they got liberation, it's because they started political parties, modeling their political parties on the ANC, the oldest liberation organization. And therefore, it looks like in Africans, let's say, the apple felne ver van die boom.
Indeed, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. SABC News international editor there, Sophie Mokoena in Nasrec for us.